Do you see yourself with FOPO? Like, do you
Oh,
see that?
big time. Huge, huge
Yeah,
topic for myself. Definitely.
yeah. I think the claim I made is that I think it's the greatest constrictor of our potential.
Welcome to Mindset with Dr. Michael Gervais. I am super excited to be chatting to you today and about your work with high performance and all different types of sports. That's going to be super cool. But let me begin with this question. What have you learned from all the athletes that you've been working with?
You know, such a cool question because there's so much. And as I reflect on the 25 years of working with World's Best, it's not a clean set of best practices or core principles. It's not that. And there are some that emerge larger than others, but it's the fundamental commitments that World's Best make that is incredibly inspiring. And so those fundamental commitments, and I don't take either of those words lightly. When you're in the presence of somebody, whether it's a global shifter like Nelson Mandela or fill in the blanks, or a world-class athlete who's made the fundamental commitment, it's palpable. And the rest of us kind of go through life in a little bit of a haphazard junkyard, try to piece things together type of way. And it's this fundamental commitment about how I'm going to line up my thoughts, words, and actions in a way that has precision and speed and artistic nature, independent of the external conditions. I'm going to line up thoughts, words, and actions and be able to do that artistically over time. That's got me. That's the thing that really inspires and has inspired me to do as well.
You're not only working on that psychological side, face to face with athletes, but you're also a host of an amazing podcast as well,
Yeah.
Finding Mastery. Tell us about your show.
Yeah, cool. It was about 8 years ago, and my formal training was undergrad in psychology, master's degree in sports science, and then a PhD in psychology with a specialization in sport. And if there was a specialty, it would be, or subspecialty, it would be consequential environments. And that's a long formal training process. And then I was out kind of in the wild working with World's Best, and I was learning a lot and hopefully sharing, with them as well. And I wanted to celebrate the genius that is in those extreme, hostile, rugged, highly stressful environments. I wanted to celebrate those people and celebrate their practices. And I also wanted to learn from people I haven't met yet. And the podcast is like this great way to do that. So it's almost like it's an informal postgraduate training for me. And then it's this, I don't know, I think it's a wonderful way to celebrate the genius that lies in people as a way to wake up the genius in others.
That's so cool. And it really struck me doing my research on you, how you phrased your field, your subspecialty, what takes place in consequential environments, in environments where mistakes are costly. How did you come up with that? Because, it nails it so much.
Well, I was fortunate to work with Red Bull's high performance program for about 10 years. And so, again, I hope I added to it. I definitely learned a lot as well. It was an exciting time for me. And so, consequential environments are, there's a nuance there. And the nuance that you would recognize is that our brain is, 400 to 200,000 years old. And it hasn't changed all that much, but modern times have changed quite a bit. And so when we feel the threat from a wildebeest or a threat from a warring tribe or a threat from being cold, at night, our brain is designed to do something very specific and particular and repeatable. And, like it does a thing. And I can explain that in a minute. The remarkable part of that is when, that sounds like when we're on, in the backcountry on the back of a spine that nobody's, dropped in before, or very few have, or it's certainly an intense line that we're trying to ski, or fill in the blanks, whatever that consequential physical environment is. That feels kind of like it's the ancient brain doing its thing. Okay, so there's like keep me alive stuff that we're working against, or working with. And we need all of these psychological skills to navigate that. Not just the physical, technical, but the psychological / emotional skills to be able to navigate that moment. However, when you're in a hallway and your coworker walks by, or your supervisor walks by, or the CEO walks by and says, hey, I asked you for that report, and I haven't seen it yet. And you forgot. Your brain does the same thing. Or when you walk by somebody or you're in a meeting and they kind of give you an eye roll when you're speaking, or they talk over you, or there's some sort of slight of respect or dismissiveness, that triggers the same structure in the brain that is designed for surviving wildebeest or heights or dangerous environments. One of the most dangerous environments most of us work in, the most consequential environments most of us operate in, are emotional and social, not physical. So I'm fortunate to have an up-close view of how people operate in those physically demanding consequential environments, how they do it psychologically and emotionally. And then what I'm trying to do is crosswalk that to the pedestrians of us, about how can we be more present, more agile, more supple, stronger in hallways, board meetings, living room conversations, in those other environments.
And what would you say is the biggest challenge building that bridge?
The biggest challenge is that most people have never formally trained their mind. So the biggest challenge is not actually doing the skill work. It's that they've seen psychology as a room for weakness, a conversation for folks that don't have their stuff together, or they're not strong enough, or there's a taboo around it. And the heroes inside of Red Bull have changed that over the last 15, 20 years. Folks like Luke Akins, and Bobby Brown and Kaya Turtsky, and I can go on, and Ian Walsh, that have all, Nick Fanning, have pointed to the value of psychology. And when the cool ones point to psychology, it creates air cover for the rest of us. And they're the cool ones. And so they're pointing to, what I think is the most beautiful of all sciences. They're pointing to it and saying, it's making a difference for me. Are you going to call me weak? Nick won 3 world championships. Kaya Turtsky won over and over and over again, slopestyle gold medals. There's nothing weak about them. And so that's the big work. The actual training of the mind, it's tricky in a second level because it's invisible. Our mind, our thoughts, we don't really know much about where they come from, where they go, how much they weigh.
True.
So it's an invisible science, which is tricky. Gravity's invisible. We know it exists. We can see the impact of gravity. The mind is invisible. We know it exists. We can see the impact of the mind. So it's not the actual training. It's just working in the world of invisible. And then when we get to the actual skill building, oh my God, they're almost so simple. It's like silly. Humans are the most complex ecosystem on the planet. And training the mind is actually quite simple. What's complicated is bridging the complexity of the unique human and the simplicity of evidence-based, well-established, best principles of how to train the mind, and putting those together. That's the complex nature of it. But if you've got the right ecosystem, Lisa, where the cool kids are like, what do you mean you're not training your mind? Like, oh, I get it. You actually don't want to be your best. You just want to kind of fit in. Okay. That's cool. Like, we can schedule a dinner in like 6 months from now. You're not one of me. You're not one of my people. Like the hungry ones, the fundamentally committed ones, they want to be around people like them. And so, anyways, that's kind of how I think about it.
And that's such a crucial thing you're mentioning right there. It's cool as soon as the cool kids point towards it, which leads me directly to something that's very crucial and very central to your idea of approaching this whole mental realm. It's FOPO. What's FOPO, Mike?
Thanks for bringing it up. It's it's a fun little phrase, and it was inspired by FOMO, fear of missing out. And when I read that, I was like, oh, I recognize that. And then I thought, that's not my real fear. I've got a fear that is a little different, which is the fear of people's opinions. And I'll see if I can illustrate this through a story. And
please do.
When I was young, I was 16 years old. And I was a good little surfer. And I'm careful to say that out loud, certainly in the Red Bull world.
Yeah.
But I was a good little surfer. And there was a difference for me between competitive surfing and free surfing. And during free surfing, like, I could get free. I could put myself in a situation and know that it was not about what anybody else would think or see or critique. It was about the knowing of navigating that section or that situation. Okay. And then come competition days, like, I was a disaster. As soon as there was judges and critiques and family and friends and people that were like evaluating me, I was a shell of myself. It felt like, I don't know, I was like, I could access just about 50% of what I was capable of. So I'm in a heat. It's about 8 a.m, glassy conditions. It's about head high plus, super fun conditions.
Sounds so good.
It does
Wish
sound
I was
good,
there right now too.
I know, me too. And this competitor, he was older than I was, like 16. He was like 20 or young 20s. And he paddles by me and he says, Gervais, I surf with you every day out here. You got to stop worrying about all the things that could go wrong. And I thought, how does he know? Oh my God, that's exactly what's going on inside. How does he know? So he was just watching, like, what I wasn't doing. I wasn't free in any form of my sense. And then he paddled off. And I thought, well, okay, so that's not working. What would work? And this is a simple 16-year-old mind. Like, well, let me start thinking about what could go right. I don't know what happened. It started to work.
And
I thought to myself, it was that simple. And I thought to myself, like, what just happened? My physical skill didn't change. My technical skills didn't change all that much from yesterday, but I changed my mind. And then I thought, oh, I got to know more about this. So then one other related story, it was like a kind of a back-to-back experience. I had saved up for my first car. It was a Mazda B2000 truck. It was like,
nice.
It was like 1984. Okay. You can see the small truck with these small little wheels. And I'm driving down Pacific Coast Highway, which some people might recognize that street in California. And I see a car that's going in the same direction in my rearview mirror, that's going in the same direction that's going to pass me in the next lane. And I sat up and I grabbed one hand on the steering wheel and kind of leaned like a cool kid lean.
Like the really cool kid.
Cool kid. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna show up here now. And then they passed me and I looked over to try to catch their eye. They didn't look. They didn't even glance in my direction. And instantly I was like, what am I doing? I literally was a poser. I literally was posing for the moment. And I thought, like, that's embarrassing. And I thought, I need to make a fucking change. Like, this is terrible. And I didn't know how to make that change. So, like, I want to be authentic. I want to be real. I want to be core. I want to get to the truth. I want all those things. But here I was, like, just trying to look good. I was terrified of being pushed out, of not being good enough. And that was the string between those two. So I kept it private for a long time. I did my very best to not kind of, I don't know, to fall back to that type of behaviors. And then once I started getting my feet underneath of me on the theory of high performance psychology and the best practices, and I was actually at this point, somewhere around I don't know, I was 20 something working with professional athletes. It showed up with them too. This fear of not wanting to let people down, not wanting to blow it for their agent, for their mom, for their dad, for their boys, for their, teammates, whatever it might be. I was like, oh, you too have this fear of like not wanting to blow it. And it's not blow it for any other reason other than like letting others down and looking bad in their eyes and disappointing. And, so I went to work on it, and I wrote a 3-page article for Harvard Business Review, just the surface of it. And they called me 12 months later and they said, hey, Gervais, you were the #1 downloaded article for the last 12 months in a row. You've really hit a nerve. And I thought, oh, so it's not just me, not just World's Best, like it's us. And so I'm taking a long story here to get down. So then I went and did some research underneath this 3-page article. And I was like, oh my God, like I totally get it. Our brains are designed for safety, for survival, and being in the middle of the pack, being in the inner circle of the tribe is the greatest safety we have, because those of us who are on the fringe get plucked off by the wolves. But it's the ones that are on the fringe that show us potential. It's the ones on the fringe that lead the way, that come back with the new berries, come back with the new frontier, come back with the new insights. But those intrepid frontier pushers, those rebel rousers, those that say, I don't want to fit in, those are the ones that have to really understand how to give their back to the tribe, give their back to some of the community to be part of a different group of explorers. And I was like, wait, what is that crosshair? How do you do that well? How do you run your program that's authentic to you if you are part of a social, a physical, a technical, and a science pusher, and then also have a sense of safety? So long story, just a little shorter here, rounding the home base here, is that we need to understand how our brain works so that we can work well with it. And that really is what psychology is. It's the study of yourself. Nice. And there is such clear practices to not be so sensitive to the anxiety of being rejected, but more attuned to alignment, where you're able to show up with alignment of your thoughts, your words, and your actions, even in what you might at one time have considered to be a hostile, consequential, stressful environment. But when you do all the inner work, it seems to just kind of dissolve.
And can we dig in a little bit deeper here? Because that's actually the one thing that made me a little bit unhappy about your story about your 16-year-old self, as you said. And I just switched my mindset and it worked and I was free again. And I mean, technically, Mike, I know that it's that simple, but I also know that it's not that easy. You don't just switch or flip the switch and turn into the freedom. And I guess you wouldn't be where you're at today if it was that simple and easy and available for everyone. So how do we actually, approach the FOPO situation? How do we get to work if we want to get rid of that?
So first, do you see, I don't want to be assuming anything. Do you see yourself with FOPO? Do you see that?
Big time. Huge topic for myself. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that the claim I made is that I think it's the greatest constrictor of our potential. And, it's this unproductive obsession with being okay in the eyes of others. Mm-hmm. And even the ones that we think are not encumbered by that still have some of it, because it's ancient. Our brain is designed for it. So how do you work with it? Let me kind of bridge. And of course, there's the ones that are completely free from it. And those are the ones we should study. Are there
people, though, that are completely free from it? We had Miles Chamley-Watson on the show, and he was like, no, I'm really good at, just tuning everything out, tuning into myself. And I mean, if he says so, I'm jealous that it's that available to him. But it's difficult for me to believe that there's any one human being on this planet who's just free from, other people's opinions.
Yeah. So okay, this is cool. And I won't lose track of like the simplicity of that surfing story. I'll come back to it. Um, so this is not a concept for sociopaths, narcissists, and the truly enlightened. Sociopaths, they don't care, so they don't worry. Narcissists don't care, so they don't worry. And the ones that have done a ton of internal work can be free from this excessive, unproductive, but rooted in survival brain processing. So there's a nuance there. This is not about not caring what other people think. This is about not excessively worrying. And there's a subtlety there that's important as well.
Which is a really nice touch and a huge skill still.
Yeah, it definitely is. Okay, so then your question is like, how do we work with it?
Yes.
Now I'm going to bridge the surfing piece here and then get to a really clear set of ways that we could practice. This whole conversation for me is about being able to be so free with your art that you can deliver on time in a high art way, independent of the environment. Like you can bring your art forward, whatever it is, on time, right now, even when the conditions are not ideal, even when it feels hard to do so. Like that's what a true master can do. Mm-hmm. And the thing that oftentimes constricts the masterful expression is this FOPO mechanism, the fear that we have of not being good enough, the fear of being rejected. All right, so that surfing moment was, it is that simple. Like when our thoughts directly impact our emotions, and our emotions and our thoughts together create a feeling. And it's that feeling that we're trying to be connected to something or share something, that is essential for high performance. What those thoughts did is they converted that felt sense of anxiousness, the emotion of anxiety, to a feeling of like, oh, let me just do me, trust me, get in tune with what I'm trying to do. So thoughts impact emotions. The two of those together are really what create the feeling. And what your thoughts can do is they're either creating constriction or some space. And when you create more space in the way that you're thinking to yourself, about the task at hand, it allows you to, and I'm using kind of artsy language right now, but it allows you to like drop in or slip into the present moment. And once you're on time with the unfolding present moment, you give yourself a chance. I can't overstate how important the practice of being present is. You're giving yourself a chance because high performance happens in the present moment. And so part of the math of this whole psychology game is to increase the amount of time throughout your waking days that you're actually in the present moment. And if you can train your mind in a certain way to create enough space to be in the present moment, to be able to have the freedom to do your thing, whatever your thing is, the whole world changes. But if you're in the present moment, let's use a baseball analogy. You're like, you're a hitter. Okay. So you got the bat in your hand, you're on home plate, create whatever scenario you want. Bottom of the eighth, bases loaded, whatever. And you're thinking about the ball you just missed, or you're thinking about what your coach wanted you to do, or you're thinking about, man, my team's counting on me. You're not picking up the ball. Your mind is somewhere else. Your job is to drop into the present on the most relevant task, which is pick up the laces. So there's an internal thing that happens, which is like, excuse my locker room language. It's something like, all right, here we are. Settle in, trust your shit. And then I would just say, pick up my laces. And that's all I'm doing. So you go internal, and then you need to drive your attention externally. And that's kind of how sport happens out here, not in here. So we need to know how to work well in here, your mind, and then get all of your attention externally focused. So what I did in that moment in surfing is that I just was a little bit better with where I was putting my attention, my thoughts, and it created a different emotion, which was like, I'm okay. I can do this. And there's that feeling that comes with it where I wasn't fighting myself. I was actually like more syncopated. Maybe it was lightning in a bottle, but it is that simple. Mm-hmm. Now, can I repeat that? That's where the skill comes in. I didn't know how to repeat it.
Yeah,
I got flipping kind of lucky. And so, okay, so let me go. How do you answer FOPO? The migration from a performance-based identity to a purpose-based identity is one of the great migrations. We live in a performance-obsessed culture.
Mm-hmm. Very
we
true.
Are force ranked, stacked ranked, publicly graded in second grade, third grade, whatever it is. We're accustomed to the importance of performance. A performance-based identity is this sense that I am what I do, and I am what I do relative to how well I do it.
Which is even more true for anyone working in the sports industry, especially as a pro athlete, right?
That's right. But it doesn't have to be that way. So you know this, Lisa, like you and me and the listener, like we're so much more than the thing that we do. But when we attach our identity to that thing, it feels like every time we do the thing, it can be a referendum on our entire identity, our entire sense of self. It's no longer I'm trying to hit the ball, which is a behavior, but it's like my whole identity is on the line. That's why my heart is pounding. That's why my mind is racing, because it's now so big. I've made it big. And it's actually quite simple. Pick up the laces, flip my hips, track the ball all the way into over the plate. And so, and every sport can be broken down in the kind of simplicity of the movements. But what I'm trying to say is, when you're good at something at a young age, what's happening at a young age developmentally is you're trying to figure out your identity. Who am I? And if there's this pouring into you from the world around you, wow, you're really good at surfing. You're really good at fill in the blanks, whatever it is. Then your identity becomes fused with your performance. And that's a really dangerous way to go through life.
It is.
Yeah. So performance-based identity, you can be the best in the world with it. No problems. It's the hard way to do it, but you can do it. And those that are purpose-based, their identity is wrapped around not how well I do something, not what you think of how well I'm doing something, but it's based on like, I'm on a mission and I need people to be part of that mission. And I am fundamentally committed to figuring this thing out. And thank goodness that there's fans. Thank goodness that there's agents and lawyers and this and that and judges and critiques and teammates and competitors, because we need this whole ecosystem. And my purpose is not to look good. That's what a performance-based identity is really about. My purpose is not to just execute on demand, but it's something far bigger than me. And those people have a whole different type of freedom. And those are the ones that change the world. They change industries. And the performance-based people, no problem. They can do some cool stuff in the world, but they're playing this secondary game, constantly needing to have higher levels of performance to know that they're okay. And you see this with models all the time. As soon as he or she, they get all this attention when they're younger for how beautiful they are, and that's a depreciating asset. Mm-hmm. So you hit your, 40s, 50s, 60s, and things look different. And then in the 60s, and it's like the body composition is totally different. It's a forcing function, like to freak out, because your identity is wrapped around being beautiful. And now the world just says, wrinkles and whatever is not beautiful. So who am I? And that's the same exact train track for elite performers, for many of them.
So how do you assess this idea of switching from performance-based to purpose-based? I know that there are hundreds and thousands of books on how to find your purpose, how to find your why. So many ways of doing that. And that's a really tough thing to figure out for yourself. And I feel like it changes sometimes. Like, I'm not even that old yet, but, even throughout even 30 years of age, it can change for you. So how do you, while working with athletes, assess that idea?
I mean, you're hitting on it, is that it's hard. You know what? Squatting 450. Well, yeah, but so is squatting 450 pounds. So is deadlifting. So is like hucking yourself off of, whatever. I mean, all that is hard. Like, why all of a sudden are we like, boy, this is really hard? Yeah, no shit. Like, this is where like the separation happens, is the most. And okay, so what is sports psychology? We study how the best in the world use their mind. What is sports science? We study like the science from an observable standpoint, how the best move or how their physiology works or whatever. So when we study the most powerful people on the planet, they're really clear about their purpose. So they're not special. They just did the internal alone work. And the three legs to the purpose stool is that nobody can give it to you. It has to uniquely matter to you. The second is that it's got to be bigger than you. So you're just part of it. You're not it. You are not the show. You're part of it. And it really matters to you. So when somebody is going to do media training, the person who knows their purpose says, look, I just give me some feedback on how I'm actually saying the words. I know what I want to say. I know exactly what I want to talk about. And matter of fact, I mean, if Nelson Mandela was in this conversation, if Malala was in this conversation, if Mother Teresa, if Joan of Arc, if whatever, if the intrepid explorers, Magellan is one of my heroes. Like, if he was in here, he'd be trying to get some more ships because he thinks the world is round, and everyone else thinks it's flat. And he says, "I'm gonna die trying," which he did. Like, their purpose is so crisp. So how do you do it? You got to get quiet. You got to either talk with people that are wise, you journal, or you meditate. Those are the three practices for clarity. And it's talking it out, writing it out, or sitting with it. And if you're not practicing one of those three in a diligent, discerning, deliberate way, you're a casual student of psychology. That's like, and that is a referendum on your potential. If your sport is, let's just stay with surfing. If your sport is surfing and you're a casual student of bottom turns, you're a casual student of cardio paddling, I mean, you're not going to go very far. So unless you're the freak.
And as you said, if the cool guys say this is not freaky, this is actually the real stuff, let's bring in football as well, because you've been working with the Seahawks for 9 years now. And you said earlier, it's hard to lift or squat 450 pounds. I get it. So why would it be easy to assess your mental power? But I can imagine that it's easier to make a squad of 52 NFL players want to squat 450 pounds than sit down and journal or talk to someone or meditate, because of, not only how our society works and what, in this case, strong men are told what they're supposed to do and look like, but also because not a lot of people are doing this yet or have been doing it. How do you bring this idea that some would maybe even call spiritual to a locker room full of tall, strong guys who just want to throw balls and be strong on their defensive line?
Yeah, 6'8", 295, 350 pound human being. They look different, but they want the same thing. When you walk into any elite performing environment and you say, how important is the mental part of the game here? You know what they say. Oh, at this level? Pfft, we're all physically, technically on it. At this level? Yeah, big time. So they want it. They just don't want to do stuff that's corny. They don't want to do stuff that is totally weird, because FOPO is part of them. like they're looking around like, are you actually meditating? Oh, you are? Oh, everyone is. Oh, okay. All right, here I go. So one of the ways it works is you create a culture of excellence. You create a culture with the standards are very clear that we're not going to have any stone unturned. We're going to do things better than they've ever been done before. It's a phrase that the Seattle Seahawks will use. And we're going to make some fundamental commitments to be our very best and to help each other be their very best. And then we just go through a model of like what a sport performance model looks like. And we do a self-scout, and we do like, so we ask each athlete like, okay, where are you in this model? 1 out of 10, where's your nutrition game? 1 out of 10, where's your technical skills? And you can break it out in sub capabilities. 1 out of 10, where's your physical? 1 out of 10, where's your mental game? And they usually look and go, well, what do you mean? And go, well, what do you think the mental skills are? And they go, I'm not sure. And I say, well, I don't know. Should we start with a 0? Like, should we start with a 1? And it's not like, of course, everybody has mental skills, but it's an entryway into the conversation. And I wouldn't have had we won a Super Bowl at the Seattle Seahawks. And in the first 4 years as I was with the team, we won a Super Bowl, which is really hard to do. Yeah. And then we got back to back to a Super Bowl, and we lost in dramatic fashion. But to get to a back-to-back Super Bowl thing in 4 years is pretty special. So what looking back, what we're doing to build a culture with the standard of excellence was very clear. And the head coach made it all very normal. So you've got 24 to 28-year-olds that are wanting to be their very best. They understand the mental part of this game is important. And you've got a head coach who's like got a history of excellence. And he's like, look, we're not doing taboo psychology. We're going to make this thing in the hallways, and it's going to be a competitive advantage. Get your stuff together now. And so then so I'm over operationalizing this. But then if you are fortunate enough to get 1 or 2 of the better athletes to go, oh, I love this, then the whole thing kind of gets much easier. But if you've got 1 or 2 of the quote star athletes that are like, this is crazy.
Yeah, right.
Then you or I haven't done my job correctly. So before you roll anything out, this is kind of rule number 1 in business. Know the answers to the test. No, do not be surprised. So before I would roll anything out, I would want to understand the perspective on a one-on-one basis. Like, who are the ones that love it? Who are the ones that think this is stupid? And then what I've come to learn to do is the ones that are like, not for me. I need to know that before. And then I build a relationship with them and say, okay, no problems. What I'm going to ask though, is that we're going to try to do something. Most people want this. They don't know how to say it, but we did a little survey. Actually, 92% of people said that the mental skills or mental part of the game is really important. So they want it. So what I'm going to ask is just don't get in the way. You got some brothers here that want this. Just don't get in the way. So you and I will be connected on this thing back channel. Just don't get in the way now. Give me 6 weeks.
So how do you approach a group of athletes versus single athletes? You've been working, for example, with Carrie Walsh Jennings as well. I can imagine that she has to be the one open and ready to work on their mental game versus, on a Seahawks team like that, I guess that Coach Carroll was the one who would initiate the collaboration, right?
Yeah, Coach Carroll was the one, to create the cascade. And the athletes, it's easy when you're outside of a culture because the athletes, like Mick Fanning's been really public about our work. And so Mick was like, look, I'm not telling anyone about this because I told everyone about my physical training. I told everyone like how important fitness was. And then next season, everybody was fit. And I was like, damn it.
That's funny. Okay.
So he didn't talk about it until post-career. And so, which is totally cool. Competitive advantage.
Yeah.
You got to know what you really want in life, and then put your team together. There's no chance, unless your mom and dad or coach are like, I don't know, they got 25 years of deep training in the mind to know how to help uniquely you be your very best. They might love you. They might really know how to support and challenge you, but probably don't know how to create a customized, bespoke, unique, adaptive psychological skills training program to help you go from here to there. And unless they are, they've studied it in a deep way. So we got to know our teams. No different than a nutritionist, sports scientist, media expert. Like, know what you want and then put your team together.
So maybe you can share how the relationship with American beach volleyball player Carrie Walsh Jennings came about.
So Carrie was the best in the world for, I think it was 2 or 3 Olympics at the time. And she went 3 or 4 years in a row without losing a game.
Which is insane.
So then she says, she gave me a ring and she says, hey, I'd just love to meet. And so I was like, cool. And so we had a conversation. I asked her, what does she want? She says something to the effect, and this is very, very public, so I'm not sharing something that's private. She says, I still want to be my best. And I think that is good enough to be the best. I'm very clear about that. But I don't want to do it without my family. I don't want to do it at the cost of my relationship with my kids, with my husband, with my parents. So I can hear her right now in my ears. So Doc, I don't know how to do that. Do you think it's possible?
I love
do you
that.
basically, do you think that I can have this dual process? And I said, I don't know. I don't know. Because at that time, this was like 2008 or 9 or something, I had swallowed this pill. And I regret that I swallowed it, but I didn't know better. I had swallowed this pill that true performance began where wellness ended. That if you really wanted to be great, you had to sacrifice so much.
Mm-hmm.
You had to redline. You had to be different. And that's how we thought about it.
Performance-based.
Yeah, like on the edge,
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, I don't know. I said, I'm really intrigued. I'd love to partner with that on you. And she goes, yeah. I said, you sure? And she said, yep. I cannot see myself. Great athletes use their imagination really well. She goes, I can't see myself on the podium with a lone feeling. So we went after it and it worked. It's come to find out for her, I think for most of us, it is possible.
And how did you go after it? How did you approach that pretty big mission?
Yeah, it's just like, I'll fast forward what I think is going to happen probably, let's go 7 years from now. As psychology becomes more incorporated, it's already valued at a deep level, but it's not folded in a way.
True.
And so athletes, early on, we're like, we want to be bigger, faster, stronger, better, never one outlast, And then, so we brought in S&C, strength and conditioning. Then athletes were bigger, faster, stronger, so they're blowing out, ligaments, joints, whatever. So we bring in medical, ATC, prehab, rehab, nutrition. And it's still not folded in yet, psychology. So I think what's going to happen, let's say 7 years from now, is that the athletes, I know this to be true, athletes do not need to practice at the extensive level that they're physically practicing.
Yeah. Good
We are
take.
overtraining, under-recovered, kind of horseshoe approach to what we think is required for fitness or technical skill development. But think about it. The practice schedule that we know is really built out of the anxiety of the coaches. Do it again. I want to see if you can do it again. Can you do it again? I want to see if you can do it again. Do it again. Okay, we're going to have to do it again.
The anxiety of the coaches.
Mm-hmm. And so, and the drive of athletes are like, yeah, I want to really get this. And so they look up to the adult, and the adult says, okay, do it again. And yeah, but my left hip hurts. Yeah, you know what? You're going to have to figure that, suck it up. You don't need water. Like you don't need a break. Harden up. That old 1970s approach. So if we know this from a scientific perspective, that when you are engrossed in your imagination and you're doing a mental practice, mental rehearsal, you're creating a representation of the skill that you want to do. Not only does it enhance confidence, which is cool, but it actually enhances the grooving of the neurological pathway that is required for excellence to be repeated. It grows myelin sheath on the nerve cells. It strengthens that familiarity of the grooving of excellent behavior. And there's no cost to it. There's no physical risk involved. And when I go shoot a free throw and I do 100 in a row, that's really good. Okay, good. There was maybe, 15 out of 100 that were wonky, like not well grooved, maybe they went in, maybe they didn't. If I was disciplined enough, I could do 100 shots in my mind without any variation, like really precise. And take that small example and then blow that idea up. That I think what happens is mental training increases in time, physical technical decreases in time. We've got a slight uptick in overall time under tension, physical, technical, and mental. And we've got an exponential outsized impact on what the growth arc looks like. And I say that, and I know exactly what coaches are saying and strength coaches are saying.
Yeah, of course.
Get out of here, Gervais. You are crazy. So I don't lead with any of that. But that's essentially what I've done with most of my athletes, is that we've increased how they use their mind so they're more present. And we've increased the strength of their imagination to see excellence without any sloppiness in performance, and without any risk to injury, and without any cost to physical volume or intensity.
Can you give me an example of how to practice my imagination of excellence without sloppiness right now?
Yeah. So what is it that you want to be better at?
Let's say, what do I want to be better at? Oh, interesting. I have nothing at hand. What do I mean?
Oh, Lisa. Okay, so then I'll give you. I'll give you one.
Please.
Let's just go back to surfing because we're kind of on it.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Is that pick a wave of consequence. Okay, one. I don't know. Maybe you get 5 in a session.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have to wait 6 months. For the wave to kind of do its thing, So imagine a wave of consequence. You only get a handful of them, and the bottom turn is really important. And so I can put myself, if I'm good enough with my imagination, I can put myself in that situation in my mind over and over and over. I can slow it down. I can feel it. Where's my hand going to be? How much weight on my back foot? Where am I looking? I can do over and over and over, and I don't have to wait for the physical thing. And then the skeptic says, that's not the same. I say, true. That's true. Doing it's better. But if you're only going to get 6 waves a day, you get 15 waves at this wave that you want to be great at for a world championship, or it's a thing you're trying to do in a great way, and you get 15 to 20 of them in a season, and you fall on 4 of them, we're down to 12 bottom turns, and you're going to work it all out under those 12? No chance. I mean, that is really sloppy.
How many times per week would you exercise this, like the perfect wave? Let's stick with that example. Do you have like a fixed schedule? Do you meet up with the athletes? Do you have a 8:30 or 8 a.m. meeting every morning?
The research is not clear on duration or frequency. Research is not clear there. So we're out on the wild a little bit, and we just kind of need to use our creativity here. How bad do you want it? How great do you want to be? How important is it to be familiar, to lay neurological tracks that are grooved with excellence? How skilled are you? How quickly does your imagination become fuzzy? How deep is your attention? So there's lots of variables. If your attention struggles, your imagination is not very crisp or like, you need to do some practice. Mm-hmm. And like, how bad do you want it? If you don't really want it that bad, then, infrequent is fine. But if it really matters to you, you spend more time. And it's like, I would caution against like, I do imagery when I'm driving. No, that's not. You're driving.
Oh.
It's not imagery. I do imagery when I'm walking. Not really. You're walking. I do imagery when I'm riding a bike. I don't know. That's not really how it's done. Like you want a quiet body.
Silence.
Ideally, what we did with USA Swimming is that we would fire the body. So run some sprints in the water, turn your nervous system on, quick dry off, get into a more quiet environment, and all the athletes would go in. And while the nervous system is fired up, see a world-class time. So
interesting.
Yeah, but you're not doing it while you're riding a bike or eating or having a conversation. And, that's all really sloppy and amateur. So it's like a disciplined approach to it.
So how did you do it with Felix Baumgartner then, who did the Red Bull Stratos space dive in 2010, and Luke Akins, who was part of Red Bull's Heaven Sent? So
Felix, he talked a bunch about this in one of his documentaries, is that exactly what you would imagine. Close his eyes, quiet his mind, get some stillness in his body, and he would see the jump hundreds of times, thousands of times before he actually jumped. And it's not like he would create the movie of like from start to finish each time he would go do mental imagery. He would go work out certain segments, like how do I open the capsule door? Like, and just seeing himself sequentially doing it and feeling it. Mm-hmm. How do I deflate? How do, fill in the blanks, all the technical skills.
Yeah.
Or inflate. So it's playing the most beautiful movie you can imagine. That's it.
We spoke about finding purpose earlier. Would you say that you have found yours? I'm just thinking of, concepts like ikigai that really lead you to a phrase or a word or something. Do you have that clear for yourself?
Yeah. Like I'm definitely drinking the champagne I teach, that I serve. Yes, my purpose is clear, and I'm happy to share it if that's what you're asking.
Please.
Yeah, my purpose is to help people live in the present moment more often. That's it, because that's the keyhole. It's where high performance is expressed, but more importantly to me, it's where wisdom is revealed. It's where all things that are amazing are experienced, and our minds are unconditioned, and left unconditioned, they worry, they wander. And wandering is not a problem, worrying is not a problem, but when it's excessive, it is a problem. So my mission is to help people, my purpose is to help people live in the present moment more often. And what that serves is really creating a rising tide of flourishing. And so that's it, helping people live in the present moment more often.
And where's that mission going to take you in the near or further away future?
A mentor of mine asked, like, Mike, is your purpose related to helping one go deep or many across? Is it more vertical or horizontal? I want to say vertical, but it's not. It's more horizontal right now. And so the structure of my business life is one client or project a month or a year. And then trying to figure out how to move these practices across cultures. So you ask, where am I going? Like, my most important and meaningful partnership is the senior leadership team at Microsoft, and their challenge to me to help train all 200,000 of their employee base.
Wow.
And we've got a handful of those companies that we're working with at Finding Mastery. And so it really is, how do we scale best practices to help people be in the present moment more often?
That is so interesting. And in the future, is there one person or organization that you'd hope to work with?
If there's a vertical that I haven't spent enough time with that I'm really intrigued by, it would be NASA, or it would be like Blue Origin. I've done some beautiful, meaningful work with special operators, military. I've been fortunate to work like on the edges of space with Felix and Luke, and fill in the blanks with some of the Air Force folks. And so it's NASA. Super interesting to me.
That's a really nice mission. Crossing my fingers for you for sure.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Yeah.
The last question I would have before we're wrapping this up, we always try to make this about, tangible things for our audience, for our listeners. What, if you had to wrap this up now, would be the one thing that you wish everyone knew about mental performance?
Oh, cool question. What do I wish everyone knew about mental performance? I would say, what do I wish everyone knew? And I wouldn't add the mental performance. I would say, I wish everyone knew how much more capable they are, how much more freedom they have inside of themselves, and how much more power they can yield on whatever it is that they want to explore in life. And that starts with investing in the study of your own psychology, the study of yourself, and building the skills for greater awareness and the skills to be able to navigate high stress. So I would, in the most simple way, I'd say, make a fundamental commitment to work on the inside, the internal skills, to allow you to truly live the great life that we're capable of. So I'd just make a commitment and be really consistent on a day-to-day basis on it. And then I kind of smile because I know what happens when people do it. It's extraordinary.
Thank you so much, Mike. This was really, really cool. I appreciate all your insights, your time, and your tips and tools that you shared. All the best for you. Thank you for being on Mindset Win.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Michael. This was so interesting, and it really struck me personally how you have to do your mental work daily just as well as you would go to the gym in order to see results. So yeah, maybe I have to include a daily routine or a mental exercise into my daily routine to see some changes. But guys, remember that you can always get in touch with us. I would love to hear if you may be applying some of the tools and tricks that we're learning in our conversations here. You can do so by either leaving a review or comment on whatever platform you're listening or watching, or drop us an email on mindsetwin@redbull.com. And in fact, we've got an email from a French student called Min Charles, who is studying sports. He says, I really love the podcast. The people are very interesting, and it's always a pleasure to listen to. He's also suggested a topic for our next Mindset Win Thursday episode, and he thinks it would be cool to look at neurolinguistic programming and the similarities between losing and grief, which is so cool. I'll definitely run this by York and hope that we can tackle this soon. Thank you so much for sharing and suggesting, Min Charles, and I also hope that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I'm not on top with my French. But yeah, guys, remember to also check out our Mindset Win YouTube channel, where you can find all our conversations on video as well. Thanks again for listening, guys. I hope you found this interesting and useful, and that you will tune in for our next episode. See you then.